pierwszą osobę, która będzie mówić? Pierwszego mówcę dziś mamy?
Tak, Błażej Lenkowski.
To pana Błażeja widziałam. A potem?
A potem jest Hanna Zdanowska.
No to też już widziałam.
Potem jest Małgorzata
Grabarczyk też była.
Potem jest Jeannette Baljeu. I jest tutaj siedzi w tej
4, 3, 2.
Szanowni Państwo, nadszedł.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, that's the moment when we officially open the Freedom Games, their 12th edition. And I invite to the stage Liberté, President Błażej Lenkowski. Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's so great to see you so numerously in this Friday evening, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you on this great festival of idea and culture and thought, free thought, on Freedom Games 2025. I welcome city, municipal authorities, all the representatives of our partners, dear guests, Mr. President Aleksander Kwaśniewski. A round of applause. I have an impression that autumn 2025, or generally year 2025, cannot give us any moment of peace from this time of uncertainty. Starting this year, we go deeper in new crises and generally in a feeling of fright about the future. The world that we knew a decade ago seemed to be a far memory. The idea from 90s was replaced by uncertainty times. Though from my perspective, both these narratives are exaggerating the reality, because 80s were not some idealia or current reality. The level of life in Poland or neighboring countries is exceptional, and we cannot just leave this transformation aside. Therefore, we decided to name this year's edition the Uncertainty Time. This uncertainty calmed down our focus. All these frights around us make our society more tend to manipulation, looking for simple solutions, hearing the populists or radical forces that promise false and simple but false answers for difficult questions. That's why we are on the moment of exceptional time, a challenge for all democratic forces and strategists who have to find an effective answer to all these scares and the threat that cannot be neglected. We need to somehow fit it in liberal freedoms and economical freedoms. Ladies and gentlemen, I deeply believe that the future is not determined. We have to be determined to shape it in the right way. It's important to co-shape it with a word and with the memory of those who should not be forgotten. Every year, from this stage, I remind about the fate of Andrzej Poczobut, who is the president of Belarusian regime from the first edition of the Games. His case was noticed in Brussels level, and he received the award of Sakharov from European Parliament. We demand to free him at last. This uncertainty time, or the time of doubt, also touches a certain part of pro-democratic society in Poland. In my opinion, wrongly. Ladies and gentlemen, a state of our mind is a forecast of the future. Negative thinking is not rational. Just take a look. We're in a completely different situation that we used to be when we meet here 2 or 3 years ago, when it seemed that the system in Poland is closed by one political party that changes Poland into authoritarian state. Very little person believed that we will manage to move them away from power, but it happened because it turned out that we have the right amount of citizens that were that united and achieved it. Another thing, no one actually believed that Ukraine will be able to stop militarily Russia for the last 4 years. Recently, I read an interesting comparison. During 4 years after Barbarossa operation began by Hitler forces, USSR conquered Berlin, but Putin, due to the attitude of Ukrainian, cannot leave Donbas. So our future should not be negative, neither as a response to macro phenomena on international arena, though nor in internal political arena. It all depends on how we will work and how we will build a system robustness of the system, and many depends on leaders, because real leaders find strength inside them to shape this reality no matter what are the obstacles. Leaders can unite and inspire. During this unfortunate 8 years of rule, we were united by the feeling of unity and the goal. Now the goal is to rebuild this society and to involve civic society. We need leaders who would be able to unite, who will be able to look at other people, notice their co-workers, build a team, what is more, who can mitigate conflicts that appear naturally in the process of cooperation, co-ruling, and tend to achieve higher goals. I hope that during nearest 2 years we will observe such attitudes in Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great hope that this program of Freedom Games will be well received by you. And I would like to thank you to our partners, to our president of Łódź, Hanna Zdanowska, also to our strategic partners, Marshal's office of Łódzkie Voivodeship and Łódzkie Center of Events. And in particularly, very warm thank you to my whole team that prepared the Freedom Games. You did an amazing work. From year to year, this event is bigger and bigger. It's a spectacular event, and I know it's sometimes difficult, but I wanted to say really thank you, and I'm really proud that I can work with you. Thank you, and I hope that this will be a great weekend. Thank you, Mr. President Błażej Lenkowski. Without him, we would not be here. And now, President of Łódź, Hanna Zdanowska, who is on this position from year 2010. It's during her presidency Freedom Games were born in Łódź. Mr. President, Honorable Mr. President, dear guests, after such inspiring power speech of Jurek Owsiak, after Błażej Lenkowski, so meritoric speech, it's difficult for me to keep the same level, but I would like to welcome you during this difficult time, and it's a great honor for me, but at the same time a great challenge. Outside our eastern border, we have a regular war. In Europe, we see a populism growing. A world is suffering leadership crisis, and the strength of alliances that were supposed to bring peace and stabilization is now in question. It's difficult to differentiate reality from deepfakes. Social media propagate false information. In the internet, you can find most of hate and anger. Nevertheless, I believe that we will leave this event believing that not everything is lost. I believe that after the uncertainty, there will be time of bravery to defend human rights and democracy, a bravery to defend rudimentary basic values, bravery to call things their own names. I am sure that due to the presence of great people of policy, culture, and due to this such a numerous audience, so many of you who simply believe and who do care about the discussion, about the debate, and the meetings that are ahead of us, will really change the reality, so that in the Monday, this world will be a bit better than we have today. That is what I wish you from the bottom of my heart. I believe in it, and I consider the Freedom Games to be opened. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hanna Zdanowska. And I invite to the stage Małgorzata Grabarczyk, Chairman of the Łódź Voivodeship Assembly. Mr. President, Ms. President, honorable guests, I am really glad that Freedom Games were born in Łódź, and that they are in our most beautiful voivodeship, Łódzkie Voivodeship. We are honored that as a Marshal's office we can be a strategic partner of this significant event. And today I will speak to you with words of Miss Marshal Joanna Skrzydlewska, who unfortunately couldn't be here today with us. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Freedom Games is the event that gather us around the crucial values, foundations of democracy, such as freedom, tolerance, and respect to the rights. Freedom is not just a slogan. It's a determination and everyday practice. It's the space where we expand as a person and as a society. Freedom Games, organized by Liberté organization, is a symbol of such a space, a place for meetings, of conversations and inspirations that allow us to build a better future together. That's why we are so happy that Marshal's office of Łódzkie Voivodeship is for the first time a strategic partner of this event. As a self-government and Łódzkie Voivodeship Assembly, we will actively participate in panels and discussions, sharing with our experience, but also learning from others. Łódzkie was always the place where freedom, entrepreneurship, and civic approach was a ground of societal growth. Freedom Games is a great opportunity to not only cherish these values, but also enforce them and propagate them. The participation of self-government of Łódzkie Voivodeship in this event is not a sign of support to the ideas of freedom and democracy, but it's also a chance to show that cooperation, dialogue, and involvement can create a strong, modern society. We are proud that we can be a part of the project that brings people of different views, inspiring them to act for the common good. I invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to actively participate in panels, discussions, and lectures. May they be a source of new idea, courage, and motivation for work, for action. We are certain that together we can show that freedom is a value that we create and cherish every day together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Małgorzata. Let me invite a representative of a country who loves freedom, symbolizes freedom, Jeannette Baljeu, a Dutch MP, a member of the European Liberal Forum. Bardzo dziękuję. Witam pana prezydenta. Bardzo dziękuję za zaproszenie mnie. Przyjemnością jest dla mnie być z państwem na 12 Igrzyskach Wolności tu w Łodzi. Jestem członkiem Parlamentu Europejskiego, ale dumnym członkiem Europejskiego Liberté.
Has the honor to be part of this magnificent event. The Freedom Games is for me the first time, but many have cooperated already here. And I'm so happy to be here because my predecessor said this is really the event to go to, so here I am. And of course, we have also panelists. We have panels on the topic of uncertainty. We have panels on the economy. What can we do to really strengthen the European economy? How can we combine the local economy with the global economy? Of course, we will talk also in panels about foreign interference and how to defend our democracies. And of course, very, very important here in Poland, security and defense. I mean, this is the topic, of course, to discuss in uncertain times. And as a daughter of a Navy officer, I know what the fight for freedom could be, because we had peace in my time, but it is no longer the world that we are living in. And it is your world that is more to the edge of where the war is going than it is where I come from in the Netherlands. So I have a great respect on how this discussion here can be, how we can see how we get further, how we can pass these wars. I mean, it is important that we fight for our liberal values, that we fight for our way of living, our democracy. And I'm very grateful that we can work together. And I thank the Liberté Foundation and of course the ELF team for making this all possible. And I'm looking forward to have this contact with you, because only in community we can work together and we can find solutions in uncertain times. Because we own the future, as we say at ELF, we can make it a better world. Thank you so much.
Dziękujemy pani Jeannette Baljeu.
Thank you very much, Jeannette. Let me invite Krzysztof Garbacz, the Regional Manager of Retail Banking with PKO BP. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Freedom Games is an event that links ideas, experiences and visions for the future. Our involvement in this initiative is also a part of our mission. PKO BP is wherever banking can be a tool of a positive change, both in economy but in the society. Because one of our pillars is engagement in supporting the development. PKO Bank Polski, as a financial institution deeply rooted in the Polish economy and Polish society, supports We invest in the development of society, financial knowledge, digital knowledge, because we believe that a strong economy starts from active and cautious society. I'm happy that during the Freedom Games, representatives of our bank will shape the conversations, share experiences about how we can support and develop economy and the society. We will have insight on business scaling, local challenges, and how to build inclusive institutions. I would like to thank you very much. I wish you all the best for the 3 days of the event. Thank you very much. Thank you, Krzysztof. Now, let me invite a member of the board of the PZUSA, Elżbieta Hauser-Szenej. PZU is the greatest Polish insurance company. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to be with you and co-open the Freedom Games. This event has been permanently registered on the map of events which build Polish democracy and civic society. This is an event that reminds us about critical thinking, free, well-understood concept of freedom, responsibility and truth, which is a bit neglected, and I believe the context of disinformation needs to come up in our debates. We are meeting in uncertain times where we are all starting to feel uneasy, and every day we feel this helplessness and fear. And in this fear, we frequently make short-cut decisions. We are easy to be manipulated, and we turn towards easy solutions, populism frequently. And this is something we want to be defended from. And places like this are exactly for us to have tools to prevent from the populism. PZU has for many years been serving people with assistance in different situations. When support and help is needed, we protect millions of people, lives, property, and more than that. Every day, we are trying to help, but also to implement numerous educational programs to support you in protection against cyber attacks and those skills of everyday help in the right building of small local communities. Only last year, PZU trained or organized proper events that covered over 15 million of Poles. Our responsibility does not start and end with protection. Our responsibility is far broader, and within it, we want to be in the right place in the right time. So we mustn't miss an event like this one. I wish that this event, the couple of days we will be here together, is a place where you will hear not just good words, but new ideas shall be born that we will implement later on. We will convert them into actions to build a good common wealth, an activity that will lead us to still better place on this earth that is our country. I wish you that heartily. Thank you. Thank you, Elżbieta. And let me invite Tom Palmer, Deputy President with Atlas Network.
It is so wonderful to be back in the beautiful city of Łódź, in the free nation of Poland, among people who are dedicated, za nasze I wasze wolność, because liberty is the beating heart of the Polish nation. All of us are experiencing a time of great anxiety and uncertainty. It reminds me of the 1930s, when the free world was besieged by collectivist tyrannies and movements, chauvinistic nationalism, Bolshevism, fascism, National Socialism, and imperial conquest. And now, war in Ukraine, Russian planes and drones over Poland, Germany, Estonia, and Denmark. Putinism, Eurasianism, neo-fascism, Orbanism, MAGA, populist ideologies that corrupt mafia states who enrich their cronies at the expense of the productive people of their countries. But here we are, happy freedom warriors, we who guard the gates against the daily assaults by dictators, mobsters, and populist hate-mongers, by those who seek to divide us into the real people and the enemies of the people, who try to set us against each other by nationality, gender, religion, sexuality, race, and so on. But as we fight them, we must also work not to become like them, not to give in to messages of hatred and division. We want to live in free societies, at peace with our neighbors, whether our neighbors live across the street or on the other side of a border. And we must not sacrifice our freedoms, our economic freedoms, our political freedoms, our social freedoms to any party, any politician, or any government that would take from us the right to trade, to do business, to speak, to worship, to travel, and to live as we want and not as they command us. So we stand here among happy warriors for freedom, people who believe in the pursuit of happiness and the right of every person to live as he or she wants. And so you lift my mood. Being here with you lifts my mood. You overcome the darkness, you are the light, and you can win. And you will win, because defeat is not an option. Only 1,200 kilometers away, our Ukrainian friends are fighting against tyranny. And they know defeat is not an option. It is not possible to be defeated by the invading monsters. Now, you are not alone. Atlas Network, with whom I work, has over 500 organizations in 105 countries that share your vision of freedom and peace and toleration. The right to speak, to worship, to trade, to travel, to start a business, to run your own life while respecting the equal rights of others. After my great-great-grandfather went to the United States from Kościuszina, near Gdańsk, he bought a horse. He was a young man, and he joined the cavalry of the Union Army of the United States of America, where he fought alongside other Kashubians and Poles against the enslavement of other people. My great-great-grandfather returned to Poland in 1923 as an old man. Well, grandfather Felix Lemke, thank you. Thank you for fighting for freedom for everyone. And now it is our turn. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for your courage, for your persistence and your dedication. Thank you for giving hope to me and others around the world. Enjoy these 2025 Freedom Games.
Brawa.
A round of applause for Tom Palmer. Lars-André Richter, the director of Friedrich Neumann Foundation, a director for Central Europe.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, great honor to be here with you. It's my third time here in Łódź at the Freedom Games. I have the honor to take 2 minutes maybe to speak to you about freedom. So I'm with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, which is a German non-profit organization with activities in about 60 or 70 countries worldwide. I had the honor to serve for the foundation in Asia, Southeast Asia, in Latin America, and now for 2 years I'm back to my home continent, which is Europe. I'm the head of the office in Prague, and yeah, I had the opportunity to witness different versions of authoritarian regimes, of populisms. I mean, Tom Palmer mentioned some of them. So it's a quite complicated issue for us as liberals, as people who believe in rule of law, democracy, parliamentarism, to argue against all these different kinds of populisms. That is something which is quite maybe a little bit recent, a little bit new for me. So you have these left-wing populists, right-wing populists, but you have always kind of, let's call it, moderated populists and extremist populists. I would like to refer just 1 second to the recent parliamentary elections in Czech Republic, where I'm based. You know that the ANO movement with former Prime Minister Babiš is back, and they are considered meanwhile as a kind of moderate civilized populist, whereas the extremists, the SPD and others, the Czech SPD, they lost. So it's on the one hand more challenging for us to face all these different kinds of threats, but on the other hand I think it's a great challenge for us. We mustn't give up. We mustn't give up, fight against them, and I'm quite sure that, I mean, history hasn't come to an end, but I think there's a good reason to be optimistic. I think the open society, the liberal society, based on the rule of law idea and democracy and parliamentarism, individualism, and you name it, the open society, it's much more it's nicer, it's much more sympathetic. There's much more fun in open society, and that's why, yeah, I'm very happy to be here, to see all of you, to get inspired by you in the next 2 or 3 days. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention, and let's have a great Freedom Games 2025. Thank you very much.
Dziękujemy bardzo Larsowi André.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew Richter. Now it's time to hear Beata Stelmach, President of the Management Board of Totalizator Sportowy. Mr. President, Miss President, honorable guests, good evening. The Games is a notion very close to the company I represent. It's a sport totalizator. It's a healthy competition, just like games, fair play competition. And today we open the space for debates, conversations, maybe some disagreements, to better understand this world during this uncertainty. Miss President, in Monday it will be much better, definitely. While going here, I thought to myself I will share an information with you about all the stadiums, sport complexes, swimming pools, museums, theaters and cinemas that would not be built if not for the Totalizator Sportowy. Today we celebrate 70th anniversary of this company. I think that each of you at least once believed that maybe today these 6 lucky numbers will bring you happiness. I'm not sure if you know, but each of you is a supporter of sport and culture, because from every 1 zloty that you pay for these 6 magic numbers, 19 groszy gets directly to support sport and culture. And it is possible due to the fact that a model of the games is organized in such a way that the state has a monopoly on it. Gambling games are in monopoly. From the medieval times, games were an honorable event that was organized by the rules. First of all, fair play rule. And let's take example of that in our everydays. I wish you games, intellectual games on the highest level, because we win together. Thank you very much. Beata Stelmach is our warranty for maybe 6 lucky numbers and indeed financial freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, by that we finished an official opening of 12 Freedom Games. We can say that they are ongoing. Now just a few minutes to rearrange the stage before us the first panel, Future and Uncertainty, how our vision of tomorrow shapes social attitudes. We start at 7 p.m.
So we just had an emergency landing in Poland, in Łódź. Yeah, don't worry guys, we won't be here for long. Lads. Hello vlog, so I know we were supposed to show you some wild animals and a bit more sun, but
yeah, instead we have to spend 2 days in this boring place.
Come on.
Did you say boring? I will show you beautiful nature and animals and even more, and you will see what this region has to offer. Deal?
So we said yes, because why not, right? And this girl took us around the whole region. We ate pierogies. We saw some Polish art. We saw some wild animals. We got spiritual. And after all, we fell in love with this place.
Telewizja Polska to więcej tego, co widzowie cenią najbardziej. Pasjonujące filmy i seriale, a w obsadzie najbardziej gorące nazwiska. Największe sportowe imprezy i momenty, które przejdą do historii. Bieżące wydarzenia, którymi żyje Polska i świat. Przebojowe koncerty, które łączą w zabawie wszystkich Polaków. Znakomite spektakle, które gromadzą rekordową publiczność. Telewizja Polska. Otwórz się na więcej.
Do PKO Banku Polskiego przenosi się nowy klient.
Weź się. Przenieść się jest easy. Czaruś, wytłumacz.
Otwierasz konto w PKO Banku Polskim i masz święty spokój. Przeniosą kasę i zlecenia stałe, a pracodawcę poinformują. Ogarniesz to przez internet. Bo to dobry bank jest.
Ej, widzę cię. Wolisz w oddziale? Dawaj do nas.
Otwórz konto w PKO Banku Polskim i dołącz do 12 milionów klientów. PKO, twój bank polski.
Będzie okej.
Ono może być cichutko w tle. Radio, które jest przyjacielem tego odbiorcy, przyjacielem człowieka.
Do zgłoszeń? Gotowi? Start!
Ja zgłoszę bibliotekę!
Ja, pierwszy basen w gminie.
Ja amfiteatr od naszej orkiestry. Wszystko w waszych rękach. Co powstanie dzięki wsparciu Totalizatora sportowego w twojej okolicy? Zgłoś obiekt sportowy lub kulturalny. Wejdź na stronę gdygrasz.pl, bo gdy grasz, wszystko gra.
Myślisz, że to ktoś wyjątkowy, miłośnik kultury, kto sypie cytatami z pamięci, a to może być ktoś, kto na wakacje pakuje książkę, tę samą co rok temu. To możesz być ty. Bo czytanie nie jest dla wybranych, jest dla wszystkich. Podziel się tym.
Mam plan na bezpieczną firmę. To plan firmowy z cybertarczą, która blokuje zagrożenia w sieci.
Cyberbezpieczeństwo? Masz od tego Orange. Teraz cybertarcza za 0 zł we wszystkich planach firmowych, a w wybranych smartfony 50% taniej. Orange tu jest.
Polska stolica kultury. Jesteś na miejscu.
It can look like this. Or like this. It is threatened. But it is our responsibility to protect it. For each person, it means something different. But when we reach it, we all know what it looks like, what it sounds like, or how it feels. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together. Freedom.
PL Music Video Awards, festiwal polskich wideoklipów, spotkania, projekcje, warsztaty, do tego gala finałowa i wybór najlepszych polskich teledysków. Zapraszamy do Łodzi 4-6 grudnia, szczegóły na www.plmva.com.
W kinie doceniam prawdziwe emocje.
Na boisku pilnuję czystej gry.
W kuchni poszukuję autentycznych smaków.
Ale w internecie jest to trudniejsze.
W internecie wobec informacji też trzeba być sędzią. Dezinformacja jest jak bramka strzelona ze spalonego.
Więc jeśli coś we mnie wzbudza emocje, daję sobie czas. Może ktoś specjalnie chce mnie zagotować, bym uległa manipulacji.
Filtruj informacje.
Sprawdzaj ich źródła.
Nie masz pewności? Nie udostępniaj.
Postaw na czysty przekaz.
Well, Atlas Network is, as the name suggests, a network, and it's global. We work all around the world. We're based in the U.S. It's a network, that is to say, organizations that share common values of limited government, of free enterprise, personal liberty, of personal responsibility.
Atlas Network provides training and support to help build capacity, but most importantly, we give our partners the tools they need to be successful.
Witam Państwa.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, on a first panel of 12 Freedom Games, Future and Uncertainty, How Our Vision of Tomorrow Shapes Social Attitudes. I welcome not only you gathered here in Łódź, but also those who watch TVP Info, because first panel is transmitted by Polish television. Together with me on the stage are Natalia de Barbaro, a writer, psychologist, sociologist, a trainer of social skills, co-creator of On Room, Wild Girls workshops, author of text to Wysokie Obcasy and Charaktery. Together with us is also Natalia Hatalska, expert for the trend analysis, CEO and founder of infuture.institute, and author of a famous book, Age of Paradoxes, Would the Technology Save Us? Good evening. And Maciej Kawecki, Law Sciences PhD, Lem Institute President, former data management associate in Ministry of Finance. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe future is uncertainty, future is a woman, and on this stage the future also has a face of a woman. Indeed, I'm alone here, yes, and you represent men on this stage. Ladies can't hear so well, therefore we would ask for technical support here. At the same time, I would like to ask us during this panel, during this discussion, to think about what are the fears, social fears, that can impact shaping of our attitudes, shaping our overview, and the approach to the future, which should give hope. But when it was offered to me to moderate this panel, the first thing that crossed my mind was the list of fears of such. It's a pandemic, war, populism, artificial intelligence, fake news, ecological disaster, migration, loneliness, and more. I sent it to you, and the question is, in fact, can you somehow broaden this list, or maybe which of the elements, or maybe something else, is something that you believe would determine the thinking about future and the approaches that will be shaped in our society? Let's start from Natalia Hatalska. Once again, good evening. Allow me to start from my quick notes, what I would add to the list. We recently conducted a research that will be presented tomorrow during a panel about dreams of Poles. Therefore, I very briefly say about it. We examined fears and dreams of Poles, and then there was one common fear that was quite surprising for me. Of course, not to mention those that you enumerated. It was a fear to die alone. And I started to think, what is the source of such a fear? And I thought to myself, it might be a matter of social changes that we are witnessing today. So we see that, first of all, we have an older society that gets old. Older people often think about losing health, about being alone. We have also a very polarized society, which is atomized. In fact, we are alone in this society. And perhaps that is why when we start to think about the end of our life, we start to be afraid of that. Therefore, when we talk about fears, we need to think that from the other side, that in fact what matters, what impacts our fears, is what kind of society we are. So fears are a reflection of who we are as people. So in fact, you turned this order upside down. So it's not us who shape, it's not our fears shape the society, rather our society shapes our fears. Yes, that's the way we should look at it, I believe. Ms. Natalia de Barbaro, Perhaps we have something else in this catalog that is a way to define our situation, our fears that can shape our vision of the future. Well, I notice a certain resistance when we tend to deepen a diagnosis of how dangerous or how uncertain it is, when we make this list of fears longer, or to think about what else we can fear. Because I think that right now we are in a situation for a certain time that our fear is pays off to others, is a benefit for others. Here I mean maybe media or more algorithms. Therefore, I am tempted to look at it from more active position, how I, from the perspective of my singular life, will not allow to put myself into this sauce, because of course these fears have its ground, but in some way, not to make them real, we need our causality position, what I can do from the perspective of my own life. How can I work on my feeling safety? Of course, not cutting out from the information, though not to be reactive towards this longer and longer list of reasons why I should start and finish my day with a feeling of uncertainty. Well, before asking Maciej Kawecki, I would ask also, so how to do it? Well, you are asking the psychologist, so I'm afraid that this format to give me a short answer, but if I was supposed to say briefly, I think Pascal said that most of problems of humanity would disappear if people managed to sit alone in a room for half an hour. I think that during today's times our strive could be only 10 minutes even, but I think that the work on that, to be capable to sit away from the screen and to feel comfortable enough with your own, to strengthen your internal structure, the one that you can base on no matter what would happen outside, it is a very practical thing. So to sit down in a room alone, on your own, just for 10 minutes and feel or work on it, do everything that will help you to feel stable with your own company. So now, Mr. Maciej Kawecki, when you were offered to participate in this panel, when I texted you about my list of fears, what crossed your mind as first thing? It really resonates what Natalia said for me. I would not say about a fear of death, but rather about, or a fear of dying alone, but rather existential fear that now follows our species. That's a fear. I will answer whether this fear has a social security number, because it is objectivized at some point. We need to speak aloud about it, and it is identified. I think this fear is stimulated by the fact that we fear on the back of our head that for the first time human brain evolved to such a level that it created an alternative intelligence, because AI is not artificial, it's a real one, it's an alternative intelligence. Our brain, Earth that has billions, trillions of years, it's the first time that we have many cellular organisms, and this kind of life emerged during some last hundreds of thousands of years. It lasted, and at some point it evaluated to the level of technological revolution. It happened only last 100 years, maybe 150 years. And among these 150 years, it's like nothing in the history of the planet. And though we have alternative intelligence, there was a story on Earth when Neanderthalians and Homo sapiens walked on the planet together, and we know what was the finish of that story. So now we have this existential uncertainty how our story will finish, and we can add that to our lists. And I'm saying that they have their social security number. I mean, they are identified because we have a Z generation which might not have the chance that we had to enjoy a good part of 20th economy of the world, not represented in a parliament. A small population in our demographic crisis is like an ethnic group. Quite briefly, according to UN estimates, Poland will shrink to the country of 20 million populations like Czech Republic. So where are these young people? They are replaced by AI because those are juniors, those who enter labor market. 39% of young people are afraid whether the AI would replace them. And in this regard, this fear is objective and it is identified. And I can see President Kwaśniewski on the audience, and I'm really touched by the sensitivity. I talked to wife of Mr. President privately to just talk about that fear, and I'm touched. We talked about how to manage in this world, how to approach older people. What about Gen Z? They have completely different languages. This alternative intelligence has completely different impact on them. And in this regard, I believe that this fear has a social security number. So, Ms. Natalia Hatalska, whether it has a social security number, or what about these existential fears that Maciej Kawecki mentioned? Are they differentiated? Again, I will refer to the research that we did. It's quite fresh on a representative group of Poles. We did it for PZU Foundation, and this research shows, we asked one question: do you feel a fear as regards to the future? 81% of Poles, no matter what age, what gender, feels a certain fear about the future. More than 50% feel it from time to time, 40% feel it often or very often. So now my question is, why do we afraid of the future? Future should give us hope, and my question is, does the future really giving us hope? Do we see the future in this uncertainty, unpredictability of the future? We as a society are not capable of seeing the future. We had unmanned Earth. I like definition unmanned time. No man's land or no man's time. I would like to do an experiment with you. When Vikings were in Europe, it was the year 1000, 1050. So it was 1,000 years ago. When I say Viking, it was 1,000 years ago. Let's do this time travel. We go back 1,000 years. When I say Viking and you close your eyes, you exactly see who it is. Perhaps some helmet on his head, a long beard. He's sailing the boat. He conquers. It's a havoc. So it's so easy. But let's imagine people 1,000 years in the future. What would you see? And I'm sure most of you would see the vacuum, because I see the vacuum. It's difficult to imagine something 1,000 years later. Why we don't have this reference with the future? Why we don't have this link? Because we don't have an everyday link with the future every day. So my suggestion is to start thinking about the future in the context of people, those who are close to us. I did an experiment for myself. I have 2 daughters. They are very close to me. And I thought to myself, their children will be really close to me. And I thought to myself, how many years I should look forward to be sure that my grandchildren will live in a good world. So I calculated an average age of a woman that give birth today, how long I can live, maybe 70, maybe 80 years. What will be the age of children of my daughters? When I calculated, when I added it all, It turned out that the perspective I need to look at is 150 years ahead. Or another experiment. There was a British philosopher, Derek Parfit. What he did it was the experiment. He said, let's imagine the forest. And someone comes to that forest and throws away broken glass. At some point, suddenly children runs into that forest. One children rushes in that forest now, and another child is running in 100 years later. And one child is cutting its foot. Now, philosophical question. Who would be suffering more, a child in 100 years that cut its feet or now? She asked, what do you mean? They feel it the same. So that's the thinking about the future. So future is not something very distant that we can't imagine, yet we need to anchor in the future. I remember listening to the presentations before. Future is the only place that we can change. We can't change the future. Contemporary takes place now, but future is a natural consequence of our choices now.
With a small exception, Maciej Kawecki, with a small exception, great brackets. We as people generally haven't been agreeing on any social consensus. I tried to list it, like the ban on nuclear tests, broken. We know it was and is being broken. Then there was first the consensus on the production of nuclear weapons. Then we know about Nagasaki, Hiroshima, nuclear tests that are ongoing, banned. No cloning of man. We know that the Chinese broke it. We know about the verdicts, but we know that the ban is being broken. We only have one consensus that we haven't broken: the ban on nuclear tests in the outer space. We somehow understand it would be the end. Even the one with the red button knows they would not be prevented from it. But AI is not for it. I don't think it is possible to reach a consensus that would be a tool of influence onto the future. Well, the future and the perspective, how long they are, that's the topic in a moment. But first, Natalia de Barbaro, could you please address the age and gender affairs and whether we can meet generationally in our fears? I hope we can meet not only in terms of fears between generations, but first I need to address you, because you said that the future is the only thing we can change. I have this feeling that the only thing, perhaps not only, a good field for a change is the present. I respect the macro perspective very much, and we observe the fate of the world, but for me, the micro perspective is very close. I remember a story that an author was talking to a journalist in a meeting, and during this author's meeting, attended by several women, the ladies asked the question, please raise a hand, the ladies whose mother was happy. Nobody raised a hand. For me, what reality the daughters of unhappy women live in, it very much depended on what their mother's reality was at that time. Today, many of us are mothers who are not happy in the eyes of our daughters. So the tissue of our everyday life decides whether our daughters, if we have any, will want to have families, will want to have children, and what life experience would be for them. Are they working out today this agency attitude or helplessness attitude, a victim's attitude? That, of course, applies to men as well. But I can see the present as the only place for intervention. When you look at what you do at your work, when you understand what's happening in the world, but the place where I can say with my own voice something and change something is this narrow footbridge of today. So that's important for me. Fears and the rage, well, I believe, and the age of people, I believe that the objects of our fears can be different. Our granddaughters may be more afraid of safety or security on the web, and the grandmother may be afraid of being cheated by any way. But the existential nature of fear is always the same, and even the Vikings might have been afraid of the same things as we are. Not belonging, not seeing the sense, the form of difference. In that sense, I feel that our differences are superficial and our similarities are fundamental. But the level of fear, well, we do not have so many written records from the Viking times so that we could run analysis, and thousands of texts were analyzed from the past 10-15 years, and we can see that the level of fear, we express fears with words in a language. So there were analysis in 3 languages, English, German, and Spanish, and the level of fear today is higher than it was after the First and the Second World War. So today we are facing a far higher level of fear due to any reason. It's the time, the number of changes we are facing, but this level is very high. Natalia, you said that you calculated how far you can go with your idea. It's about 150 years. From the Vikings' perspective, it's not a long period, but from the perspective of the acceleration we live in, like information acceleration, how the world changes around us, that's unbelievable time era, because the reality changes day to day. And information on how it changes is bombarding us non-stop. The social media overload us with information, and we can't cope with it. I'm speaking as a journalist who started where there was no internet whatsoever, and today I live in a world where every second information can be triggered about new information, a comment on information. We have fake news, we have different realities which may be difficult to find ourselves in, and that alienates us. Well, you mentioned something critical. The acceleration we see today is something we provided for ourselves. I call it quarterly capitalism. When you look at businesses, they work in quarterly cycles. In a quarter, they need to complete the budget, finish project, etc. If you look at the media, they live in daily or hourly cycles. When you look at the politics, these are short cycles related to elections. And now we fall into those short periods. We cannot look in a long perspective. What's the meaning? consequences are clear. We observe the challenges we have. There are two areas: fast fires, slow burning. Fast fires are things we need to cope with instantly. It's like fire to be extinguished immediately, like the pandemic, COVID-19. It was a fast fire. It hit and we had to cope. But we have slow burning problems that are somewhere at the back, and they will turn into fast fire. So when we speak about pandemic to be short term, that is a challenge that we name drug resistance. We have bacteria that do not react to antibiotics. We do not have new antibiotics. The pharma companies do not make business on it. And there are lots of such cases. Fast fire would be migration, intergenerational justice. But Natalia, in your words, I sense idealism. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't be thinking short term. We should, but still see some changes with long-term effects. Maciej, you mentioned AI. Today, it's a slow burning, not fast fire problem, because in long perspective, you said it's a new intelligence. What does it mean? In long-term perspective, the human will cease to be the most intelligent species in the world. So perhaps we are losing the control over our lives. We've reached a position where we are today because we had top intelligence among all the species in the world. Maciej first, Natalia follows. That's where I'm headed. Perhaps I'm not objective because this is my area of interest, but if we see that the essence of progress is technological revolution today, I think the reality is not determined by priest preaching from the pulpit, but by dopamine, and there is no instrument more important than AI. And AI today, which you don't say in public space, is a fundamentally unsolvable problem. Every programmer will say it. Alignment in neuronal networks, the compliance of the working with our expectations is not solvable. There is no programmer in the world who would know how to make a neural network fully controllable. We've created something that has so many parameters that is beyond full control. So it's going to take control over us. We control and not, Natalia. There are lots of problems, lab problems related to the development of AI. So there are tests in sandbox, we control them now. Yes, but the alignment cannot be solved as such. We do not know. No lab will answer the question whether and when we can close in that black box the reasoning of the human. Is it a mathematical process or something more? Is human brain an isolated computer system that connects to the world through the wire that is the spinal cord, as many Nobel Prize winners believe? There are the molecules, chemistry, biology, but there is math, or perhaps not. Perhaps there is something else in it. It's a discourse. We are in the world of AI. Can we create a machine that is capable of reasoning, abstract, subjective thinking? Is it going to happen? When? We don't know. It's a question you cannot answer today. If it happens, how it's going to affect us? It's a question of today. Natalia de Barbaro, over to you. I believe what we fear most, I am an ignorant in AI, we fear it takes control over us. I want to speak so much because I think, well, we are in freedom games. So we are looking for some sort of freedom, liberty, not meaning I would be horse riding, open areas with no access, digital access, but how we, in our everyday lives, the hundreds of you here, plus those online, how we can build our liberty within the circumstances we are in. Perhaps in 150 years it would be difficult for us to control artificial intelligence, but what is more or less under our control is how we live our everyday lives. And within it, we give over control today. When you speak about the phenomenon known as breakfast tsunami, which means you haven't finished your morning coffee and you've already learned about all awful things that have happened on our planet and what still may happen, when you open a website and you read the titles like "The worst is coming," the experts confirm, or we fall into a cycle, a dopamine. Well, first the cortisol goes up. To soften its bad impact, we engage into something named by cognitive psychology as safeguarding behavior, so that we reduce fear in short term. So we click, we release dopamine, and at that moment we feed our fear. We are people, many of us, who carefully, many times every day, take drugs to be afraid more.
To be afraid more, and the skill to find freedom between the stimulus and the reaction. A famous sentence that Frank quoted, "The freedom of a human is between the stimulus and the reaction." What is my reaction? Because if we only do more sophisticated way of doom scrolling, so looking for more and more terrifying news, we would not waste a chance to counterpart what we fear on our small piece of everyday life. I would like, since we have a limited time, I would like to ask about one more thing. We are not a free electrons that deal or would not deal with their fears. We are a certain part of group of societies, of countries that are organized by one or another authorities who use these social fears and they shape another attitudes. And we know that for years we have a certain dichotomy between traditionalism and liberalism. Thus one of them supports the change of the openness, and the other part gives us an armor that makes us feel safer. The question is that really true? Are those systems that can protect us, that can give us the feeling of safety, or this feeling of safety is fully illusional? How does that look from your perspective, and what could be the lesson that we can draw from the future? We talk about the future. Maciej Kawecki. I think that dividing world into liberal and traditional world is not right, and these definitions are empty now. They don't mean anything now, in fact. We mentioned that dopamine determines everything. None of us would say at home, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm a traditionalist. And I'm sure there are less and less of us anyway. Though, however, somewhere the algorithm of social media enclose us in a certain form of bubbles. If our worldview, if our thinking is more to the future, it knows better that if it serves us the sins of Israeli-Palestine war, we would stay longer there. We will see more and more ads. And if we are more conservative, It would present us with the footages of migrants, of refugees, and again we will see more and more, and again we will fall deeper into that world. But the same algorithm give people today access to the treasury of knowledge that we did not have before. And to be a bit more optimistic, because I work with that professionally, I can say that Poles are massively interested in a science. Popularization of science is what Poles are interested massively. Difficult to comprehend quantum physics material is capable of generating hundreds of thousands views more than a politician or a priest preaching. So that's the white side of an algorithms, this accessibility to the world that used to be not so available. Though politicians can win elections playing on these emotions, I would like to reflect on that. Comment that we do not specify who are we, liberal or conservative or not. I think these divisions do exist, but there is another problem. Such divisions press us into thinking this or that. I need to find my position. This famous polarization, which is evil, it doesn't have a future, in fact. And this thinking, this or that, we are trained on it. We are trained to choose good or bad, wise or stupid, liberal or conservative. We choose all the time. Though our world is not a world or this or that, it is this and that. If we look at a traditional and liberal approach, if we look at the certain dynamics between them, if we choose only to have traditional conservative approach, we will be more focused on the future, on identity, on the feeling of the sense. But if we hold to that only, we stop to develop. On the other hand, if we have only liberal perspective, freedom-oriented, we lose a feeling of a group. We will be atomized, we will be individualists, but at the same time we will see a big change, we will develop. So each of these attitudes has its own good and bad sides. Now it comes to the balance. We need at the same time a bit of the tradition, and we need the development and freshness. In native tribes, approach, a definition of 7 generations. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's we should look 7 generations ahead. It's often mentioned during a climate changes context. We need to take care of our planet so that next 7 generations can still live on it. But if we actually look at this principle in native tribes, it says that I always have behind me 7 generations and 7 generations ahead. So I'm always in the center. I need to have some history, identity. I have parents. Natalia mentioned that. Who am I? I'm an effect of what my parents were. My children will be an effect of who am I, and my husband, what approach we have. So it's very important to try to navigate, not choose between this or that, but to say we need this and that. Natalia de Barbaro. Yes, I also think about it in a metaphor of a tree. It came to my mind actually while I was listening to you that we need the roots and we need to reach. We need to reach something. We need to go from somewhere and to reach something. In this regard, I think that the division between what is conservative or what is liberal, it's also inside of us. So finding one and another in the context of a singular life seem to be the best and maybe giving potentially a biggest feeling of safety. So since we live in informational bubbles, if we live in completely different divisions than politicians try to force on us, is a state something that will survive? Do you think that country, a state, is something that in the future can defend itself, or are we moving to the society that will not need boundaries? I actually feel that we live in deglobalization world, that we are attached to the countries, not only in an institutional way, to the country, to the state as a territory, as a place. Just a moment ago, I talked to Natalia about the context that we are fighting. We started a channel of science popularization in US, so I see that we are different from them in everything, how I speak, how I behave, how I talk, how my look on the world. We are completely different in everything. Even what kind of shirts I choose for the interviews. So it's completely different world. I believe we are entering the deglobalization era and being more attached to our state in the form of our piece of land. Policy is not an art of saying truth. It's a bit of rhetoric science. It's a philosophy, questions without answers, but it's an art of saying what we want to hear. That's the first thing. So considering politicians as a part of discourse, scientific debate is pointless in my opinion, because we need to find something that can be parameterized, described. We need to remember that a politician is fundamentally not a person to say the truth, but a person that tells us what we want to hear. Another thing is that society that is not based on knowledge is a society that is easy to manipulate, is divided society, is a society that is very easily manipulated. Now we talk about safety of our country. It's easy to convince us. I mean, of course, there is a existing real threat on the eastern flank of NATO, but is that the only threat that now exists? Is that a problem for a scientific employee whose laboratory was closed? No, because his existential safety was not provided. So his understanding of the threat of eastern NATO flank is on the background. Now, how it is used by politicians, how the narrative is built, well, in a way to keep the power. So, in my opinion, what is now most important is to base on things possibly objective. Most objective is science. Maciej Kawecki said that we are on the era of deglobalization. Do you agree with that? I know it's not a geopolitical panel, but recently I was thinking to myself about a context of Europe. Well, of course, I agree about the globalization. Yet I thought to myself, when I look at Europe, it's especially close to me. I think in the perspective of a couple of dozens of years, Europe should be one country, no matter how controversially it sounds today, because simply every country in Europe is a small, tiny country as compared to other countries around the world. If Europe wants to compete with other regions, it just sooner or later it just has to become one country. I understand the deglobalization tendencies mentioned by Maciej, looking at a state structure, because in Europe we see some countries that just recently became countries, liberated, regained independence. I say that Poland regained independence after 1989. So we are a young country, want to cherish our freedom. So I understand the tendency, but I think that sooner or later, the fact that Europe will be one country, maybe in the context of an anecdote I can explain that. Recently I was going back from US, I spent 3 weeks there. I landed in Frankfurt, and to the border guard in Frankfurt I said, I'm so happy that I'm back home. And I said that, and it was surprising even to me at that moment, because I felt European. Of course, I feel that I'm Pole at the same time, but I felt that I'm so glad to go back to home, to Europe, and it's so great as compared to what's in US. So I believe that sooner or later it will be one country, no matter the tendencies now. Miss Natalia de Barbaro. I just wanted to say that Maciej mentioned we are different in everything, even choosing our t-shirt or shirt when we meet someone, as compared to those on the other side of the ocean. But on the other hand, we have this huge migration that is a wave around the world, is a wave that touches our part of the world. It only started recently. So the question about deglobalization of the problems that we as society will face, I think that it happens every day. And again, going back to this single background, it translates into a certain dilemma of a person that lives in a country, a wealthy one. That's the fact that we know about the terrible things that happen around the world, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in other places. Does that oblige me morally not to look at what is my direct experience? Because I think that something like that happens now, that we feel, and that is an element of this internalized globalization, that we feel loyal towards those that we know they suffer. And that makes that me, for instance, during a workshop that I'm delivering for women quite often, I often hear about a phenomena that people do not give themselves a right to look at their life, to experience their life, because others are in a very worst situation in a closed plan. So such deglobalization happens inside us, but at the same time, the second trend, a trend that you called deglobalization, right? Which happens parallelly. I think the scales are still moving. These atmospheric fronts are in collision, not only in states plan, but individual as well. Just quickly, globalization and deglobalization, it is the world of this and that. We see forces that work at the same time, counteracting forces. Ladies and gentlemen, our time slowly finishes, is depleting. I hope that this discussion will open for the next panels, next meetings, next conversations, either those on the stage and those during a coffee of the Freedom Games. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Our guests on our first panel were Natalia de Barbaro, Natalia Hatalska, Maciej Kawecki, and my name is Aleksandra Pawlicka. I'm a journalist from TVP Info. Now I invite you for a break, 15 minutes, and at 8 o'clock we meet together for the panel Europe.
Telewizja Polska to więcej tego, co widzowie cenią najbardziej. Pasjonujące filmy i seriale, a w obsadzie najbardziej gorące nazwiska. Największe sportowe imprezy i momenty, które przejdą do historii. Bieżące wydarzenia, którymi żyje Polska i świat. Przebojowe koncerty, które łączą w zabawie wszystkich Polaków. Znakomite spektakle, które gromadzą rekordową publiczność. Telewizja Polska. Otwórz się na więcej.
Mam plan na bezpieczną firmę. To plan firmowy z cybertarczą, która blokuje zagrożenia w sieci.
Cyberbezpieczeństwo? Masz od tego Orange. Teraz cybertarcza za 0 zł we wszystkich planach firmowych, a w wybranych smartfony 50% taniej. Orange tu jest.
W kinie doceniam prawdziwe emocje.
Na boisku pilnuję czystej gry.
W kuchni poszukuję autentycznych smaków.
Ale w internecie jest to trudniejsze.
W internecie wobec informacji też trzeba być sędzią. Dezinformacja jest jak bramka strzelona ze spalonego.
Więc jeśli coś we mnie wzbudza emocje, daję sobie czas. Może ktoś specjalnie chce mnie zagotować, bym uległa manipulacji.
Filtruj informacje.
Sprawdzaj ich źródła.
Nie masz pewności? Nie udostępniaj.
Postaw na czysty przekaz. Myślisz, że to ktoś wyjątkowy, miłośnik kultury, kto sypie cytatami z pamięci, a to może być ktoś, kto na wakacje pakuje książkę, tę samą co rok temu. To możesz być ty. Bo czytanie nie jest dla wybranych, jest dla wszystkich. Podziel się tym.
Do zgłoszeń? Gotowi? Start!
Ja zgłoszę bibliotekę!
Ja pierwszy basen w gminie.
Ja amfiteatr od naszej orkiestry.
Wszystko w waszych rękach. Co powstanie dzięki wsparciu Totalizatora Sportowego w twojej okolicy? Zgłoś obiekt sportowy lub kulturalny. Wejdź na stronę wygrasz.pl. Bo gdy grasz, wszystko gra.
Do PKO Banku Polskiego przenosi się nowy klient.
Weź się. Przenieść się jest easy. Czaruś, wytłumacz.
Otwierasz konto w PKO Banku Polskim i masz święty spokój. Przeniosą kasę i zlecenia stałe, a pracodawcę poinformują. Ogarniesz to przez internet. Bo to dobry bank jest.
Ej, widzę cię. Wolisz w oddziale? Dawaj do nas.
Otwórz konto w PKO Banku Polskim i dołącz do 12 milionów klientów. PKO, twój bank polski.
Polska stolica kultury. Jesteś na miejscu.